So the point of all of these details is to demonstrate how the stakes of the continued expansion of the prison system are linked not so much to the need to provide security for our society, but rather to growth patterns of corporations that are really not concerned with the eradication of the problems that lead to the proliferation of more and more prisons. They, as a matter of fact, benefit from and profit from the ever-expanding prison population. And if we've seen the figures for the US, the figures are very similar all over the world. Because in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, prisons have tended to replace education and healthcare and housing. And of course, because the overwhelming majority of prisoners are people of color or people from the global south, these corporate stakes in this expanding apparatus of punishment relies on old structures and new structures of racism. Racism that has its roots in slavery, racism that has its roots in genocidal colonization of indigenous population. This racism lives on. There is structural racism that lives on despite the fact that people are aware of the need to change their attitudes, or at least the expression of their attitudes. But there's a whole reservoir of psychic racism in this country. And this is why we see so many comments that slip out, you know, all kinds of people now. It's happening everywhere. And their response is generally, I'm not a racist. I don't even know where that came from, right? When that woman, Kelly Tilligman on the Golf Channel was talking about Tiger Woods, right? And they were talking about the fact that he was so good that the younger golf players couldn't catch up with him. And so one reporter said, well, they have to gang up on him. And then she said, yeah, they have to lynch him in a back alley. And afterwards, you know, she didn't know where that came from. So I think it's really important for us to recognize that the ongoing campaign against the prison industrial complex is a campaign against racism. I wanted to share with you a story about homophobia. Because not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago, down in Southern California in Oxnard, a 15-year-old boy by the name of Lawrence King was killed by a classmate. Are you familiar with that story? Some of you are. How many of you are familiar with it? Okay. How many of you heard about the campus killing in Northern Illinois University? See, almost everybody is aware of that. But this was a young man who had been bullied by a group of boys after he started wearing high-heel shoes and lipstick to school. And I've seen pictures of him, and he looks like he's a child of color. I can't see any reference to his ethnicity or racial background. But the boy who killed him was a 14-year-old who walked into the school's computer lab and shot him twice in the head on February 12th. Now, the 14-year-old who killed him will be tried as an adult, as if he possessed, and he will be tried with a hate crime. He was charged with a hate crime. And he will be tried as an adult as if he possessed the individual agency to decide for himself that homosexual and transgender people are so repulsive that they do not deserve to live. Where did he get that idea from? The attribution of absolute guilt to the individual in this case is the same logic that allowed the U.S. government and the U.S. military to shift responsibility for the horrendous sexual tortures in Abu Ghraib onto a few individuals, a few bad apples. And in the case of Lawrence King, the killer will be tried for a hate crime. If he is convicted, he will spend from 52 years to life in prison. And this boy will be a scapegoat for a heteronormative society and a government that is deeply homophobic, and that homophobia will continue. Moreover, if we rely on the prison system to solve the problem of homophobia, we are relying on a system that is complicit in the process that has rendered homophobia socially acceptable.